Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. It's funny, actually, the power just went out a few seconds ago as Leo was introducing me, but I thank my lucky stars that just before I turn on my video, you don't see black all over kasi may ilaw na. So again, good afternoon, and thank you for sharing, a bit of your time this afternoon with us and with Cisco. So as part of what was introduced a while back, so I'll be talking about what is the impact of data from different domains within our application stack, infrastructure stack, and network and the internet. So we call this at Cisco, we call this full stack observability. So for some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing this, but Cisco has gone through series of transitions and also evolving the solutions that we have and offering to the market. And this is what we have actually put together to help you in the journey towards digital transformation. And when we start thinking about this, right, I think at this point, we all know the situation we live in where it's an era of rapid change. It's especially true for us in the technology field. When we talk about services, it's always about digital services nowadays, or at least some form or another of digital service. It's always integrated, and it has become a critical part of our everyday lives. So perhaps we do this in each of our businesses, but think about it. Even as a consumer, you're likely to have a smart device or a smart home product, like maybe your doorbell, or maybe you have Alexa or Google Home, right? And right now, when we're all working remotely, for most of us, this is the case, and even for our children, right? Until today, I believe most, if not all, our schools are still doing remote learning or some form of hybrid learning arrangements. So with this increasing digital reliance, it has also resulted into rising technical complexity. So if you can imagine or visualize at this point that with all the change happening, the way that each and every company or the different brands engage with the customers, with its internal users, and how it impacts the business in itself, the operations, how it drives revenue, how it gives efficiency. It all depends on how an application, now more than ever before. So we're all heavily reliant on that application or that system that runs that priority for our organization. In a recent study by the App Attention Index, an average consumer nowadays uses about 42 applications daily. So that probably cuts across your social media applications, work, banking, maybe even food, logistics, right? So we actually use 42 applications on a day-to-day basis. I'm not actually surprised, but sometimes when these numbers come up, that's the only time you actually think through it because it's so embedded in our lives. So as a result, for businesses, we are now committed more than ever to making that experience, that digital experience, much better, much easier, and as much as possible, engaging. We don't want a boring app. We don't want a useless application, right? So everyone in the organization are so focused on these services that are coming out from the applications. So while this has forced businesses to drive faster innovation cycle, for us in IT or in the back end, it's a whirlwind of constant change. But we have to keep up. It's part of what we do. So we learned in a recent Agents of Transformation study that for many companies, IT projects that would typically span about 2 years, from an average of 18 months to 24 months, they're now being completed, or at least being mandated for completion on an average of 7 months. That's a tall order, right? So now with this new normal upon us, cost of doing things the way we had done so before, or doing nothing differently, can be detrimental to the business. It's hard to imagine going back to a world where there's less and less reliance to technology. Apps are now integrated in almost each facet of our modern life, as I mentioned earlier. So to compete in in our new or modern economy, we need to make sure that we have finely tuned customer experiences that continually optimize the business outcomes. It will be the thing that sets companies apart from the rest. That said, right, the stakes are really high. And when you do not have the ability to link your technology performance to the business outcomes, such as customer experience, maybe the number of sales transactions, or maybe let's just say the revenue itself, which is that's what's the most important part in the most important aspect in delivering our innovation goals. Now, typically you'll probably have sets of information from different sources within the organization, but having too much data that's not contextualized across these various silos can bring you further significant challenges to the business. Now, at this point in time, I want to show you this one chance to get it right, or a way to actually get this right for the IT teams, for the IT operations, and also for the business. Now, we've just said that IT departments projects are accelerated by 3 times the speed, right? And there are challenges that come along the way. So let me just give you some additional data to support this. About 77% of organizations have actually accelerated their cloud delivery today. Companies have been moving to the cloud for ease of scalability, elasticity, and the capability of available cloud functions. Second is that about 75% of technologists claim that their response to the pandemic has created more IT complexity than they have ever actually experienced. So much change had happened so rapidly that they had to act fast, but only with a short term in mind. Now, because of this, about 83% also of technologists had said that they had no ability to prioritize. If you remember, again, the second point which I raised, since they are unable to correlate things, so whatever comes up on their plate, that's what they address. So, but there is no real prioritization based on the big picture that ultimately impacts the business. So at this point, we all know that digital transformation will be here to stay, and it will come in various forms, transform in different ways, but it will always introduce an incredible amount of challenge to the organization. And that's why I'm talking about full stack observability today, because we wanted to give you the ideas and the strategies to ease up this complexity. So we know it's not easy. We understand that the position that companies are really in a massive or intense pressure to accelerate transformation initiatives, and it's blowing the teams over, the demand for these changes, these initiatives. We also know that these specific challenges associated to digital transformation is largely centered around digital experience. So this means, digital experience is at the center of these large scale initiatives. That means, or for us, that means that application is absolutely front and center. This is the time that we all need to reimagine the applications and everything that supports it. And the time to do it is now. Now, on top of that, there are a number of things that make up the overall tech stack that will allow applications discussed earlier to be delivered to the users. Think about the applications being deployed on an infrastructure. Back in the days when I started in IT, it's simple. It's a server client infrastructure. But today, an application can come in various shapes and sizes. It could be something that is sitting in the cloud, in the public or private cloud, solely on-prem, or maybe even hybrid or a mixture of both of these environments. So added to that is that every application at one point or another definitely will need some form of connectivity. Otherwise, how would you deliver this great experience that you had put together in that system, right? So of course, you need to make sure that networking or the internet is included in the entire picture. Now, next is that if these applications and workloads are not secure, then it still poses a problem. So your business will probably do not want to be featured in a global news for potentially brand destroying mistakes, right? So we need to keep security always at the top, across all of these components that we have just discussed. So all of the components I had mentioned earlier, but on top of all that, and probably the last point on this slide, is that every business will want to know how this system, how this application is actually impacting their bottom line, how it is impacting their SLAs, or how it is impacting that transformation that the organization would like to undertake. So our position in this is actually quite solid. And that's, as in the beginning of the presentation, at Cisco, we call it our full stack observability. Our app dynamics is at the center of all of that, delivering best-in-class application performance monitoring for years and years. With this, we tie it up and align the performance of the application to the actual user experience and the business impact. This is how powerful app dynamics is. And when we understand that these things are critical. So we make sure that it's included in the solution so that you can make data-driven decisions. On top of that, the other core areas where App Dynamics works together with is the infrastructure with Intersite Workload Optimizer, App Dynamics, and Workload Optimizer, or I'd call it IWO, on a day-to-day basis. So we ensure that your apps are resourced, resourced with infrastructure correctly in an automated manner. What I mean by that is that you don't have to guess how much resources, how much CPU, memory, storage need to be allocated for this specific system at any given point in time, because we know how it runs. We understand the baseline, even in an automated fashion, and we will supply that application what it needs when it needs it. Next is the layer of the network and internet. So with Thousand Eyes, it delivers deep visibility into the network, including the internet and also including your SaaS apps. And finally, as I mentioned, security is also very important. So we have integrated what we call the secure application, Cisco secure application, and Cisco secure workload that gives you workload and runtime vulnerability assessment and detection. So what this all means for you is that Cisco has your back, and we can truly help your business digitally transform across that entire stack. You don't have to get lost in translation between the different teams, because that's exactly what we are here to help you with. So when you say, what do you mean? I mean, what do you actually do with FSO? So we've done this, in fact, in our market for a couple of years now. I'd say a little over 3 years. So what has happened in our current set of customers? And I'd love to be in a one-to-one discussion with you if you'd like to hear more about this. It has actually allowed us to unite the core IT teams that are embarking in the digital transformation initiatives. Obviously, we have the infrastructure team that we have traditionally worked with for years and years, focused, of course, on the infrastructure stack, the computing, the storage, memory, the network team, of course, focusing on connectivity. But in the most recent months and years, we have actually also gone and talked to applications teams and understand what is their focus in terms of their app topology. And lastly, security. So every so often, Cisco is adding more and more capabilities within our security portfolio, and they're very focused on breach detection and vulnerability. So we bring these siloed teams, traditionally siloed teams, together like no one in the industry. Let me just quickly show you how full stack observability can probably be differentiated from what we traditionally use to to have some form of visibility or monitoring in our existing environments. Okay, so based on research and for me, honestly, based on what I hear from customers and and the analysts out there, so we've defined that the siloed domain monitoring gives certain level of observability, but always tied to a very specific environment or very specific application only. Now, when you want this report to make sense, when you send it out to the other team, there's no guarantee of that. Where full stack observability is different is that it enables the different teams to discover where there is a problem. So they actually understand where it's coming from without pointing fingers, and they're all in it to solve the issue. So there is visibility. First, there's visibility into each domain separately, and it defines what normal or the baseline looks like. So so basically in FSO or full stack observability, you still have that domain level information or domain level visibility, observability, and it does baselining. And then understanding that, we correlate it to how it impacts the performance and alerts all the different teams. Now, this is where it differentiates itself. Typically, the other tools don't inform each other how that performance impact is detrimental to the business. But with FSO, with these solutions that we have put together, it actually does. It tells each other what needs to be done, where, what to be prioritized at that certain point in time. So when you look at this differently, so usually when you use your tool sets, monitoring tool sets, it's to identify a specific problem at a certain location. But now we are actually extending the ability for root cause analysis across different domains and give you insights as to what to prioritize, what actions need to be prioritized, whether it's on the application level, the infrastructure level, the network, or even security. Okay, so probably this is another way to look at the information that I just shared. No, so where most organizations, and I also hear this from my customers. So there's this desire to be able to see from across the stack where the problem is occurring and also why. So apart from identifying why, We need to be able to give feedback how it impacts, whether positively or negatively. How does that affect the business metrics, and what should be done to address it, right? So that's where the prioritization of actions based on business impact becomes very, very helpful. So the secret sauce here is actually the business context. So that's what allows us to tie these things together and glue them and give that proactive insight, and also tie it up to what matters most to the business. We believe that full stack observability will need or makes use the business context in order to give you or let you be alerted if there are issues that are impacting the business performance of the application. Secondly, it's built with cross-domain correlation and dependency mapping, because we understand what matters to the business, right? So across the stack, we can actually provide you, the specific points where or areas where performance issues are getting caused and what are the reasons. Third is that when you have teams more closely working together, they're able to prioritize the issues and the actions that will have the largest impact to your operations. So they don't have to go in their own way and make their the changes that are they feel are important. We know as a big team, as a whole team, what should be prioritized and how it will help, whether turn back on the services, or basically improve the SLAs and get or increase the transactions. We're very deliberate and very specific with the actions that you can get out of this tool, and it is tied up directly to your business goals. Yeah. And more importantly, final point, and probably the most important, right? So we have this traditional separated teams or silo teams. But with these sets of solutions, it's really, we've found that in our engagements that when they take actions, it's really all tied together. It's no longer just a promise, but it's an actual tangible result across performance, optimization of your resources, and also security. So not one concept gets left behind. Everything is actually transforming. Now at this point, I'd like to take a few minutes to probably drill down on some of these components. Now, I'd love to do a demo for you, but it would be nice probably if you'd like to hear more about this. We can probably, send me a note and we can probably discuss that separately. But I put together some screens for you to appreciate how it actually looks like. So at each level, so I'll cover 4 of the main components and levels that we actually integrate as part of full stack observability. First is the level of applications. And through our app dynamics, we break down the typical organization silos, right? So this brings about tighter collaboration between our teams, and it's directly tied up to business results. This is all thanks to our cognition engine, which provides automatic anomaly detection and root cause analysis. We're actually able to reduce the time to identify and resolve, which also gives our customers real-time insights into the user experience, how it's tied up to the experience of the user, whether it's mobile or via a web application. And then when we tie it up to the business context, to the business goals, SLAs, we help you to quickly identify the actions and optimize the business outcomes. So it goes beyond, understanding what's running in your environment and monitoring it. This actually helps you optimize the business outcome that you want, that your organization wants to focus on. So at this level, it's where we optimize the application performance and the customer experience, like I mentioned. So we simplify the technical decisions that need to be made by focusing on that user experience. Typically, it starts with the user experience on that digital app or digital service that you're rolling out. So, we basically simplify that, tie it up to the business impact, and with that, you can gain unparalleled insight, right, to your users and how the business is running, and you can tune it further. You can tune up the application system further so that it responds, or basically you can simulate and respond to what are the renewed business goals, or maybe perhaps if you're looking at revenue, just to put it simply, and you've reached your target, so what are the possible scenarios, what can we do, whether on the infrastructure side or on the application level, to increase that, to to help the business increase the revenue performance. So we can actually tie up all these things together all through App Dynamics. So our aim is to make better decisions by connecting the IT teams and its business results.
So that's the challenge of
Hi.
dependence.
Okay, I'll move on to the next one, which is actually, at the level of the infrastructure. So as much as possible, whichever resource you're utilizing today, as I mentioned, it could be your on-prem resources, bare metal. Maybe you have a private cloud, or utilize public cloud, or maybe a bit of both. So with infrastructure optimization, we enable your application to have an assured performance and assured infrastructure supply. When maybe it's hard to imagine this today, but I hope I can share a bit of, and you can visualize where I'm getting at. So when there's an application issue at any layer of the stack, whether it's in the cloud or on your on-prem assets, let's say in a virtualization cluster or a certain piece of storage, our workload optimizer understands that. And as you can see in the screen, we can tell you exactly where there's a bit of a problem, or there may be something that you might want to look at, because and when we do that, we actually quantify the changes that you need to make. And what's more is that if you would let us, we can actually execute these functions in an automated manner. So meaning, so how does this go in a normal scenario, no? So typically, let's say an application or specific VM at this certain point in time has a sudden increased number of transactions, and it's business critical. So we want to make sure it has a supply it needs. So in that case, we can actually put together the policies in place to allow this certain application to be assigned more resources when it needs it, when it goes beyond this particular insight or threshold that it needs to be supplied more resources. So ganun siya. You can take the recommendation, read through it, and then apply it manually as a way to give you parang insights to make better decisions, or you can let the infrastructure basically manage itself. So it's like it's a decision engine. Parang binigyan natin ng brain yung how we provide or address the supply and demand of the infrastructure resources for specific applications in your environment. Okay, so the best thing also about this is that once that gets optimized, right, in a particular scenario, so with its dynamic baselining and also AI capabilities, the cognitive engine built in there, so it's not just situational analysis. So going through it in a period of time, it will give you insights as to how you can continually optimize and ensure that the application gets the infrastructure it needs to deliver the great digital experience in an ongoing manner. So ibig sabihin, so there may be impacts in efficiency, in the placement of the workloads, in terms of compliance, and it maybe even add a bit of savings, or at least more transparent costs in the actual infrastructure investments that you have to make. So like I said, we can actually quantify this, even the at a certain point, whatever is published, for example, um, in a cloud marketplace, it can even tell you how much investments need to be added in, or how much savings can be given back to the organization through the use of these tools together. Now, our workload optimizer, this one that I had just talked about, and the one I spoke about earlier, App Dynamics, these two are continually watching on the layer of the application, right? The application performance, the application code, and the application resourcing supply. And it's continually finding and fixing issues at both that infrastructure level and the code level that will affect the digital experience. So you're pretty much assured that somebody is always, this set of tools are always taking a look at how it impacts that digital experience. Now, we talked about this earlier, so everything will flow back to the network and the internet. So when talking about network visibility or internet visibility, Thousand Eyes enables us to solve the usual customer challenges related to identifying, quantifying, and fixing network issues that is tied up to the digital experience we had just discussed on the level of the application. So what does this mean? So basically, you get network visibility that ties up back to the application, which becomes an extension of your root cause analysis. So your mean time to identify and resolve for network and internet related problems, because Thousand Eyes understands your entire network path. We also extend the coverage of your RCA to enterprise collaboration and productivity SaaS applications. So the typical package applications which you do not have access to as you would if, for example, you have a tool like App Dynamics discussed earlier. In this case, Thousand Eyes will help you identify whether these services are up and running, what exactly went wrong, what time. So really, we're extending it all the way to those packaged apps. And then finally, and I think in most forms of digital commercial platforms, this is very important. Thousand Eyes helps you understand third-party service providers such as payment processing or basically payment gateways. These are mostly related to our customers' app. And it's very relevant, very important today. We want to understand all these points of third-party service integrations and dependencies. So, when it comes to SLAs and what's the impact, we understand where exactly it went wrong if it's outside your set or if it's outside your application system. All right, and finally, very important, right, is to make sure that when we talk about security, it's also applied in the context of the business relevance as well. We don't want to leave security behind, or we don't want security to hinder any type of innovation that we'd like to bring in the operations. So at this point in time, what level of security can we actually bring to the table now? So with what we call Cisco Secure Application and Cisco Secure Workload. So the app tier and node correlation will help your teams focus on incidents that actually matter most. So since you have that entire map, it's easier to identify where to focus on. And then with Secure App, you also have protection at runtime. So you'll have embedded within the application true visibility of the app's behavior. So, all in all, these two solutions will provide you automatic and continuous monitoring for security breaches and vulnerabilities at the level of workload and at the level of code. So the approaches to security that we're taking on are becoming closer and closer to what matters most to the business. Okay, so that pretty much covers the four main components of full stack observability. And I just want to quickly show you how it looks like in terms of a typical architecture that we put or we use when implementing these solutions all together. So if you want to understand how this could look like, particularly in your system, just feel free to send me a quick note. And then just to quickly wrap up my session this afternoon. So what do you really get from full stack observability, and how can Cisco really help? So I hope that from some of the screenshots, and again, I was want to reiterate, I'd love to do a demo of this specific your environment if you are interested to see it. And that we have done this in several organizations locally, and the results have been amazing and they've been very, very tangible. First is that we are actually able to dig deep and understand the business context and tie it back to the technology stack. That in itself, I think, is a big feat. And definitely App Dynamics is our it's front and center in the solution that helps us do that. So we're basically tying up your application, the infrastructure, security, and the network all together. And secondly, so with the use of these set of tools, we're able to deliver on the promise to unite the siloed teams. And in the overall operations, in the overall course of things in the IT operations, how they have been collaborating with each other is now based on shared priorities, which in some cases has never been the case. So we're very proud of this transformation that we get out of the different engagements and the staff. And finally, when IT teams and business teams act, they do so with confidence, and they know for a fact that the actions that they're taking and have prioritized are based and backed up by data-driven insights, all through delivered through the different tool sets which I had discussed, and tied back to what matters most to your business. Okay. That is actually the end of my presentation. So once again, I'm Mike Cordero from Cisco Philippines, and I'd like to hear more from you. So I'll check out the Q&A box for a few questions. If anything at all, I will send them over the chat box. Thank you very much again.